Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Our guest this week is Joanna Newton. She is the co-founder of Millennial Marketer, and she is a leader in e-learning marketing and sales. She has spent over 10 years building unique organic strategies for education-focused brands and content creators alike. She specializes in utilizing innovative and fresh marketing strategies, often used by influencers to not just acquire customers, but to create fans. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about all the things today.
Yeah, I know. And I know your bio is heavily marketing focused, but I do want to preface to our listeners that we're really not going to talk about marketing. We are going to talk about motherhood stuff and balance today. Um, But as with the question that I ask everybody, what is your definition of balanced life?
When I saw this question, I really had to take a minute to think about it. Thank you for giving it to me in
Mm,
advance because I was thinking about what that means because for me, I've never been a super routine, very specific routine focused
mm,
person. I've
mhm,
always been very comfortable bouncing in and out of personal life, parent life, friend life, work
mhm,
life. I've never been, I want to sit at my desk from 9 to 5 and then not think about work after ever. Like I'm always very fluid in my approach. And so when I
mm,
was thinking about the times that I've felt the most balanced in my life, it's when my time is very focused. And what I mean by
oh.
that, well, thank you. I like that kind of term. What I mean by that is when I have family time, I have family time
Mm,
and my focus is on family and I'm not thinking about work or worried about work or worried about something else.
mhm,
When I'm at work and I'm focused on a work project, I'm not thinking, "Oh, I should be spending more time with my family," and like distracted in that sense. Um
yeah.
and really focusing on having set times for different focuses.
Mm, okay. Yeah, that's really great. And it's so funny that you say I never really had this, just I guess structure, right? But the focus is really important because you don't have to have this structured routine, but you can still have focused areas in your life. And I completely resonate with what you just said because I am also someone who doesn't really have this specific routine that I follow every day that's to the T. Yes, I have things that I do normally every day. Like I have to drop off the kids at places. So that's one thing that I do the same every day. But what I do during that time is not always the same at the same time every day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And and that's the thing is some days may be more work life heavy and
Mm-hmm.
some days might be more family heavy or some days might be more personal care heavy, right? Every day is a little bit different and actually being able to wake up in the morning and say, what is it that I actually need today? And I recognize that being a business owner, I have a lot more flexibility than a lot of people, but I know when I did work in 9 to 5, um, it was hard for me to have to
Mm.
wake up, put my makeup on, shower, eat
Yep.
breakfast, get in the car, commute. Like that
Mm-hmm.
morning kind of drudgery, was really hard for me. And the flexibility that I have working for myself of being able to say, I don't have any meetings this morning, so I don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
showering till 11 is really
Yeah.
nice. Like it's really nice to live like that. And I love
Mm.
being able to have a flexible schedule and not be so worried that it doesn't look like other people's. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are like the
Mm.
5 a.m. wake up with I am not into that. Right. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah. If I wake up at 5 a.m. because I happen to fall asleep right at 8:39, cool. But I am not going to force myself to try and wake up at 5 a.m. every morning because that's just miserable for me.
Yeah. It's not good at all. Then I'll be in bed at
Yeah.
7, and that's not really very productive for me.
Yeah. And I think that's the really important thing to keep in mind is it's important for people to have what a routine or a plan that works for them that is also flexible to whatever their needs are at that time. I think when we are thinking of balance and having this balanced life, often can focus too much on, okay, what is this plan that I'm going to do every single day when that's not necessarily realistic because things happen, our needs change, our energy levels change, and I don't think that that's really talked about enough.
Yeah, definitely. And finding that time to prioritize your personal needs is like really
Mm,
hard. Like I've kind of been forced to have to care for myself in the past year.
mm,
I was diagnosed in early 2023 with something called ITP, which I couldn't
okay.
pronounce for you if I tried, but
Okay, you're good.
you could Google ITP and see how to pronounce it. But it basically means that my blood platelets like are really
Mm,
messed up. My like immune system and my blood platelets don't like function properly, and my blood platelet count
okay.
levels are
Mm,
crazy low, which means my blood's like thin. So I bruise
mm,
really easily. I feel fatigue. I get a
okay.
lot of fatigue. I have a lot of issues. So because of that, the only way that I like can perform well in life is by doing things to take care of myself. Like I
Mm,
take certain supplements. I have to make sure I get enough water. I have to make sure I get enough protein. I have to get exercise. If I don't do those, the symptoms
hmm.
of what I have like are worse. So
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I've almost been forced into having like I
Mm,
have been horrible about taking care of myself most of my life. And it's hard. You're a mom, I own a business,
mm,
I have a husband. Like it's hard to do it all. But I got kind of forced into
hmm.
having to take care of myself. And like I almost feel better than when I didn't have a weird rare disease. So, when you're actually do the things you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
you can show up better in the world.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like you just said, I feel better now than when I wasn't suffering from this disease, right? Like it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to learn how to take care of ourselves and meet our needs before things like this pop up in our life.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, and it's so crazy because this is really a phenomenon that's like a heavy problem for women. And I have to pull up this post that I stumbled upon earlier, like right before we got in, and it is from feminist.mom.therapist, and she had written, "Women grew up spending their leisure time reading magazines, teaching them 100 ways to please a man, while men were taught how to focus on their hobbies and ambitions. No wonder mothers today spend their free time being told how to gentle parent and improve their relationships, while men play video games and train for marathons." I was just, yep, that is so true. And those cosmopolitan magazines with like 100 ways to please your man is what popped up for me. Like that image of that magazine popped up.
Yeah, and we get taught that in every single like area of our lives. So
Mm,
as a woman, there's so much in society, in literature we read, in shows and movies
mhm,
and magazines, all of those things that are telling us that our job is to serve, right? Whether
mhm,
that's to serve our husband, serve our children,
yeah.
and it even I think really trickles into the workplace too. Like when
Oh,
you're a
absolutely.
woman at work, like you're expected to go above and beyond, do things outside of your job description, uh, plan the parties, host the
Mhm,
get-togethers, do all of those things and constantly accommodate. And when you
yeah.
stand up for your needs, your boundaries, your things in any facet of your life, it's like very unexpected. And people are
Mhm.
like very taken aback. I thought about this because I was in a meeting the other day and kind of kind of set a boundary about something. And like you could tell
Mm,
it made everyone uncomfortable, right? Like everyone was like, it wasn't mean. I was just like, well, that's not Like, I was just very
Mhm.
direct, very straightforward about what was happening, and it made everyone super uncomfortable.
Mm,
And then I got off that call. I felt really bad. I was like, I shouldn't
mm.
have done that. Like, you know, like those thoughts in your
Yeah.
head. But I thought
Yep.
when a man does that in a meeting, he's considered like a leader and a boss. And like when I do
Yep.
that, people are like, who does she think she is saying no?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
It is. It is. And unfortunately, that happens. We see about it and hear about it, and then we're labeled as, oh, she's a bitch, right?
Hmm.
Or she's, she's not easy to work with. When it's nowhere. The woman is setting the boundary. She's trying to protect her time and her space, and or she is trying to set a tone for how things should be moving forward
Yeah.
with whatever the goals are for the company or for whatever she is doing. But instead, she's called names.
Hmm. Totally. And then you add in motherhood, a marriage
Hmm.
relationship, like the expectations of your life to accom-
Yeah.
accommodate for your children,
Yes.
accommodate for your
Yeah.
husband, accommodate for your
Hmm.
boss or whoever is not performing well enough in your workplace, right? We're
Yeah.
constantly giving of ourselves. Those things can be exhausting. And then you get that
Hmm.
stereotype. I remember when I was younger, like when I was like a teenager, I'd always look at like a lot of older women always seemed like a
Hmm.
little crazy to me. Do you know what I mean? Like just like they could go off at any minute. You know, like in that, like when
Yeah.
they're over 40, you're like you could just set them off at any minute. And there's also the like, stereotype of the Karen, right? Which at the end of the
Hmm.
day is actually just a woman who's like saying what she needs. Like I know that it can be. I know like the stereotypical Karen can be inappropriate, right, and be rude and mean. But like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
baseline stereotype
Hmm.
is a woman who didn't get what she want at a restaurant and says it was wrong.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, right? Like this is insane. And
Yeah.
you know, if standing up for what you believe in gets you stereotyped like that, you're going to like bottle it up. And that's what can
Mm.
make us sick. That's what can
Yeah.
make us go off at any minute because, yeah, something could set us off at any time because we're literally holding
Hmm.
down all of the emotions and
Oh, yeah.
holding everyone else in the world together.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because women shouldn't have needs. They should just accept everyone else's and accommodate for
Exactly.
everyone else's. But
Exactly.
that's not the case. And women have been seen as like these angry people. Oh, she's just angry, or oh, it's because she's on her period. But it's because women are forced to bottle everything up and to not speak, not say anything because they're going to inconvenience someone. When that's such a problem.
100%.
And women do end up exploding because you can't hold it all in forever.
Yeah. And I would say like 9 times out of 10, if like I at least know in my life, if I have one of those like explosive moments,
Hmm.
I like yell at someone or lose my mind, I have probably calmly and respectfully asked for that thing about
Mm,
5 or 6 times. Right. So
yeah.
I've probably directly asked, indirectly, I've probably
Mm,
tried 5 or 6 different strategies to get someone to listen to me before the explosion.
mm,
Then the explosion happens and it's like, oh, this is out of nowhere. And I'm like, is it? Like, is
yeah.
it out of nowhere? I don't think so.
Yeah. And I do want to point out that that is not always the case for women and moms, because I know a lot of moms just don't feel like, well, if I say anything, it's not going to be listened to anyways. But then we have cases where they do say it and it's just ignored.
Hmm.
And you're right. Then it's like, oh, well, it came out of nowhere. It didn't. That's
Yeah.
not the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about like, and I think what's so tough about motherhood is what like the truth is I definitely became more of a feminist after I became a mom. Maybe it's because I have a little girl, but I'd also say I didn't really feel the effects of toxic masculinity
Mm,
until I was a mom. So,
yeah.
and I think some of that came from like how I was treated. Like
Mm,
once I was becoming a mother, people expected that that became my identity. The amount of times like
yeah.
I would see a doctor while I was pregnant and they would be like, "You're not going back to work, right?" Like get that
Wow.
question. Yeah, like seriously, this, I mean, like multiple times, people were,
Mm,
"Oh, like you're just going to be part-time." Right? Like, and it's
mm,
like the expectation that once you become a mother, all you are is a mother. Like, fathers don't have that. No one, like,
no, they
no
don't.
one would say, "Oh, what are you going to do about work after the baby?" Like, no one will say that to a man. The
No.
expectation is
Yeah.
that you sacrifice your career, your dreams for that.
Hmm.
But if you think about if you're a mom and you're listening to this, like, would you want your daughter to sacrifice everything she ever wanted to
Mm,
have children? Now, it's one, I'll say, if your dream in life is to be a mom, take care of your kids, do those things, that's fantastic. Do
yeah.
that, right? If that's your dream and goal, but the reality is we're all individuals. We all have
Hmm.
different ideas of what we want our lives to look like, and that's a
Hmm.
fantastic thing. The point is that you don't need to fully strip away your entire identity and have your only
Yeah.
identity be mom. And even if you're choosing a life as like a stay-at-home mom or like a primary parent, you should have things in your life that you love and enjoy and
Hmm. Yeah,
outside of just being a parent.
absolutely. Yeah. And whenever you were saying that you feel like you really became a feminist after becoming a mom, and when I was thinking about that and how I do resonate with that because I feel the same way. I think that that's really when and my first child was a boy. So this still
So it still
it still
works.
resonated
It
with me.
still
Yeah, it
resonates.
still works. I think it's because for me, I noticed as I was thinking, I did notice this toxic or problematic masculinity. It was just presented as, well, that's how men are. You're just gonna have to deal with it. That's what you have to deal with when you're a woman. You have to deal with this. And so, okay, cool. I'm gonna deal with it. But then when you become a mom, there's so many other responsibilities, and you start to think, or at least I did, I don't want to deal with this. This is not okay. I don't want my son to be like this. I don't want him treating women like this, and it shouldn't be okay. On top of, I shouldn't be the only one handling the responsibilities of the house and cooking. No, that's not okay. We need to have conversations about this. And so I think that's really when you start to realize, okay, maybe you can handle the load when you're single or when you're just have no kids, but once you become a mom, it's like everything is your responsibility all of a sudden? No, that's not okay. And so, yeah, I would totally agree.
Yeah.
I really became a feminist when I became a mom.
Yeah, I will to say like when I became a mom, kind of started personally feeling some effects of it. I then looked back at my like life and was like, oh, like you know how you have those memories. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like that happened to me. Like what
Yeah.
that happened to me. I once like this is not really related to motherhood in any way, but like when I was a kid, I had in at recess, a little boy
Mhm.
threw a rock at me, like at my back. Like
Oh my
I was
gosh.
looking in one direction, like I lost, like
Yeah.
wind took out of me everything. That little boy
Mhm.
didn't get in trouble because he said that he threw the rock at me because he liked me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
like I was told to not make a big deal of it. Like I remember crying. I was told to stop being hysterical. Like
Oh my gosh.
literally fourth grade.
Wow.
and and he didn't get in trouble, and it was like, he shouldn't have done that, but he was just trying to get your attention because he likes you. Can you
Oh my gosh. That there's so many problems there.
like there's so many problems there, but that's just like, so you take that, you And I think
Mm-hmm.
girls get that messaging, like,
Oh yeah.
to
Yep.
just be, not make a big deal of things, just be okay with it, move on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, are thrust into this, most women are thrust into a role when they have kids, they have a husband, they're taking care of the home, they're taking care of the kids, they're doing
Mm-hmm.
all of that work, which is a
Yeah.
24/7 job. And the expectation is like, oh, that's just what you do. You're just supposed to be happy about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so this is like, I think, a great segue into your non-traditional circumstance where your partner is the one who stays at home. How did you come about making that decision? And how did you make it work?
Yeah, it definitely was a bit of a journey, and it started out with the intention of being temporary. So,
Mm,
my husband was in grad school while I was pregnant. And he like finished up right as I had May, my daughter, and
mm,
he had started a job. Like right when I had May, he had
okay.
started a brand new job. And the job was about an hour and 15-minute commute. So
Oh my
it was a
gosh.
big
One
commute
way
one way.
or
It was
oh
a really
wow.
long commute, and it was like odd hours.
Mm,
And what our thinking was, we were like, okay, if you start this job, I was like, let's
mhm.
make sure like you love it and it's good, and we'll just move like we were in a temporary like apartment kind of housing
Okay.
situation.
Mhm,
We were just like, we'll move closer if
mhm,
as long as this is a good thing. So he's like 4 weeks into the job. He hates leaving. He hates not seeing his
mm,
daughter. Like it's just awful for him. And the job is like horrible. It wasn't what he
oh,
expected. The
mhm,
working conditions weren't great. Like people weren't following
mm,
protocols that would be dangerous for him, if people weren't
okay.
following
Yeah.
protocols, and he hated it. And we didn't
Mm,
actually have a plan for childcare. I did work from home at the time, and I was working for a company, not myself at the time. We didn't have plans for childcare. And I was like, look, we can't
mhm,
move. I was like, we can't move for this job. You hate this job. Like
mm,
we can't move,
yeah.
and doing this commute every day is going to kill you. We're going to have to get childcare. You're never going
Yeah.
to see her because I'm going to drop her off. Like it's going to be not a good situation for any of us. We're
Mhm,
all going to be miserable. Um, because he previously been a student, we were only living off my
mhm,
income for a couple years while he was a student. So I was like, we'll be fine with one income. Like, why don't you quit? Just quit, give your two
mhm.
weeks notice and you can look for something else. Right. And then in the short term, you'll take care of her while I'm working. And then he just like loved it.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
he loved taking care of the home. He loved being with her. He loved spending time with her, and he just loved it. And now
Mm,
it
yeah.
was it was a process because, well, first of all, when kids are babies,
Mhm,
trying to like do all the housework and all the things is a lot, right? Like that's a
yes.
lot. And I think we naturally just shared it because I didn't
Mm,
assume it was 100% his job.
yeah.
Right? Like being like the mentality of woman, he understood
Yeah.
that since he was home, he should be doing stuff. And I understood that I shouldn't expect dinner on the table and the house perfectly clean
Mm,
at 5 o'clock because that's unrealistic. Right.
yeah.
So we just really worked together and communicated and figured out like what things he
Mm,
should do, what things I should do. And it really worked out really well. Now my daughter's in school like during that day, and
okay.
he's still just focusing on being a stay-at-home dad. Because one thing I'll tell
Mm,
you is, first of all, the school day's not that long. Like she's done it
no.
3:30,
Yeah.
3:45. So
Yeah.
if he
You still
hadn't,
need childcare even if they're in school.
I know, like
Yeah.
that makes no sense. And then, being that I'm a full-time business owner, I work all the time. Like, and I like it that
Mhm.
way. Like, it's not like a complaint, but my business partner and I are building our business from scratch. We're completely bootstrapped. We
Mm.
haven't taken any funding. And so that does mean like a lot of work to be able to grow, because we
Mhm.
were trying to generate cash from our services to build the new things, which means I work
Okay.
a lot,
Yeah.
right? So I sometimes work
Mhm.
late. I have clients on the West Coast, so I work. My schedule's weird.
Mhm.
Sometimes I work weekends or nights, and I don't think I would be able to do what I'm doing without
Mhm.
his support, like at
Yeah.
all. And so, and like the snow days and the days off and all the
Oh, yeah.
uncertainty. I don't know how, I'm sure you have listeners that have two parents who are working like full time. I don't
Mhm.
know how, if you have a full time, two people with full time in office jobs, how you take care of your kids. Like, I don't know how that
Oh,
works.
yeah. You don't. Someone else does. And I'm not saying
Yeah,
that in a mean way, but it's true.
right.
Like you don't, because I was in that position. My husband works outside of the home at a like 9 to 5. I don't know. He goes in at 7 to 3. But and I was working outside the home, like a regular 9 to 5 job too. And I would wake up, get the kids ready, drop them off at daycare, and then I would go to work and I would pick them up from daycare. And someone was picking them up from school, like my mom or my grandparents or something. And so I wouldn't see them till 5 or 6 by the time we got home. So we're not raising our kids, other people are. And it's great if you have that support system to be able to do
Hmm.
that. But I didn't want that. I didn't want to be away from them for that long and then be drained. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I also wanted to highlight that when your partner stayed home, you were working a corporate job, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so him, because I heard your story for the listeners that are like, how do you know all this? Uh, so I heard part of Joanna's story in her podcast called Her First. Correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that's the name.
That's right. That's the
Her
name.
First podcast. And so, and she was talking about how having her husband stay at home even increased her salary at her corporate job. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So this is something that I don't think happens for a lot of women. I went on maternity leave. I came
Mhm.
back from maternity leave and shortly after applied for a new role within my company, which was like that one I think was like a $10,000 like salary increase.
Mm.
So within less than a year of being back at my job, I got a promotion to like a higher level leadership role, which a lot of times doesn't like when you look at stats about income
Mhm.
in women,
Yeah.
it's really at the age of motherhood where
Mhm.
the pay gap changes. So like
Yes.
typically early career as a woman, you're going to be making the same as your male counterparts, but when you get to that like early 30s kind of time
Mhm.
frame, that's when men start making more and women kind of plateau. This is like very normal. So I was at that moment in my
Yeah.
career, and between when I went back to work with a stay-at-home parent and when I left the corporate workforce, my salary more than doubled in
Mm. Wow.
those, what was it, 5 years? Like in 5 years, I literally doubled my salary. Um, and I know that was because I had that
Mhm.
support at home. Because like it or
Yeah.
not, now we can talk about corporate culture and how corporate culture should support parenting and all of those things. That's a different question. That's a whole different conversation. The
Oh,
reality
that's a whole
is
other
that's
episode.
a whole episode. But the
Yeah.
the reality is the corporate
Mhm.
world values you being flexible, you being available, you not
Yeah.
leaving at 3 every day. Like it really values those things. And if I was in and out of school, if I was in and out of work to pick up a daughter who is sick, if I
Mm.
was leaving early for everything, if I was doing all of those things, I
Yeah.
would have not gotten the promotions and the
Oh
work
yeah, you wouldn't have.
that I did. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have. It also allowed me to continue to hone my skills, right? So I
Mm.
had time to read and research and learn and grow on top of
Yeah.
my work schedule to get better at what I did. And I even, towards the end of my corporate career, started a business while I had a full-time
Mm.
job and was able to flip into being an entrepreneur. And there's no way like I would have been able to do that without like an
Mm.
amazing support system making sure
Yeah.
things were done. And as my life got crazier and crazier, he took on more and more of the housework. Like I don't
Mm.
like he does all of the
Yeah.
laundry and like puts it all away, which is like huge. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's like a like if you are responsible for the laundry of a family, like that's a lot.
It
Um
is.
and
It is a
like
lot.
if I really need something
Mm-hmm.
done, like he's able to be that support person for me. So I do
Mm.
think I do think for us, and I know everybody's different, but for us, I think our household income is
Mm-hmm.
overall higher than it would be if we were both trying to work full
Mm.
time.
That's amazing.
I
Yeah.
just think that that's the case because of the attention that I had, and I'm very ambitious. Like I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be happy if I was doing this. And I think he knew that and was like, if
Mm.
that's what you want, I'm here to support that.
Yeah. That's awesome. And what was so pointing to those statistics? Yes, that's true. And one thing I also wanted to know in that specific context of the statistics is it even shows, the research even shows that corporate jobs, so there is heavy women in like lower or entry level middle management, but once you get to those higher supervisory or CEO type, those type of roles, it's male dominated. And part of that is because those roles require those people to have partners that are doing everything else. Because even for a man to climb up that ladder, they have to be fully devoted to work. Their time has to be fully devoted, fully focused on work, and no presence at home because their partner is taking care of all of that. So, yeah, it's hard. It's especially hard for women. It's still hard for men in terms of them balancing their family life and work because it doesn't allow for the balance. It's just your work. If you want this position, work, work, work all the time.
Yeah.
And and so one thing that I had wanted to know was how did the people around you respond or react to this non-traditional way of living?
Yeah, it was weird at first, especially. A lot of people were very uncomfortable with it. I actually just posted I think I shared this story in the podcast and I just posted like a TikTok
Mm,
of this story. But what one thing that was really interesting was we had a friend who just made a decision to be a stay-at-home mom. So
okay.
both her and her husband were working. We had a child really close together, and she decided to
Mm.
be a stay-at-home mom. And when we told them my husband was doing this, she said to us, she said, "Well, what are you going to do all day?" To my husband. Like someone who's I'm like
Oh my God.
and I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, exactly what you're going like exactly what you're doing all day." And I think early on I think now,
Mm.
especially the people who are close to us in our life, they get it. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like
Oh yeah.
they see how hard he works, they see how hard I work. They're like, "You guys are an amazing team, an amazing pair." Like, great. But early on, I think there was this like underlying tone when people found
Mm.
out that like they thought he was lazy.
Oh my gosh.
Like they thought that he was just not working and just
Mm.
being supported by me, like get in the just sit around playing video games all day. Do you know what I mean? I think that was the like
Mm.
the thought in people's heads. And that really tells you like a lot of
Hmm.
things. Like it just shows you how
Yeah.
little people value the work of moms and stay-at-home moms,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if they're like, if a man's doing it, it's like lazy. Like, come on. Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
value that. Like, and it's so valuable. Like we're raising our next generation
Yeah.
of humans, right?
Yeah.
Like this is so valuable, right? The world doesn't pay you for it, but like it's
Mm-hmm.
incredibly valuable. Our economy doesn't work if we don't have new people to come in and contribute when they're
Mm-hmm.
grown-ups in a valuable way. So, people were pretty confused about it. My mom's gotten
Mm-hmm.
over it now, but like she used to always say to me like, "Does it ever bother you that you're the only one making money? Like, does that ever bother you?" And I'm like, "That's a leading question. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
like, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me. Like, I'm like, do you ever want to be the one that stays at home?" I'm like, no, that job sounds harder. Like, I'd rather
Yeah.
build a business. Like, that sounds easier to me
Yes.
than than running a whole household.
Yeah.
And I think that people really did initially think that he was just lazy. And I think that that was
Mm.
hard for him. It made me really
Oh, I
angry and
bet.
like want to like murder everybody, but it was hard for him because he kind of felt like, is that what this is? And I would kind of just honestly reassure him that this
Mm.
was the right choice for us. And I think when people started turning a corner is when they saw my personal success.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like when they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a good
Uh-huh.
thing, right? Because of
Yes.
your personal success. But what's funny is when you see
Mm-hmm.
it the opposite way, right? When a woman decides to stay home, take care of her family, and then that man sees success, I don't feel like the world looks at it as that woman played a huge role in her
Mm-hmm.
husband seeing that success. But she, like, from my experience, and I'm sure from theirs, totally does, right? Like
Yeah.
her work at home, if she's doing
Mm-hmm.
that, is the thing that's helping him reach that level of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so interesting in terms of like people will view a man as lazy because we had a very similar experience in that. Now that I'm thinking about this, is my husband works 7 to 3 at his job, and there are often opportunities to work overtime. So that means he'd be working from like 6 to 4. But we don't need that for our family to work. We actually just need him to work his regular job, because if he works overtime, that throws off my schedule completely. Because then that means I can't go to the gym after work. I have to go in the morning, which I hate to do. I would rather go when I'm done with what I'm doing and do that in the evening than do that first thing. And so when his coworkers, because it's basically all males, when his coworkers saw him leaving, whenever they had their uh, overtime, they were like, "Oh, you're going home? Oh, look at you going home. Like you don't want to work? You don't want to work?" It's like, no, I don't need to stay. Why am I going to stay if I don't need to stay? And so, but people will stay even if they don't need to stay, because that is, I guess, more productive. Like you should be working if you're a man. And so even that is just problematic. And so yeah, they would basically make fun of him for leaving, for being able to have this extra time, which is crazy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Families, whatever they
Mhm.
look like, everyone, right? This is coming back to that balance. Everyone's needs matter,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
if him working his 7 to 3 is enough financially, great. Work 7 to 3 because
Yeah.
your time to be able to
Mhm.
work out is important, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yes.
right, like those, like your needs are important
Mhm.
and so are his needs. And then working as a family to, right, it's everyone's needs won't always constantly be met, right? Like that's a reality. But
Yeah.
to make decisions in a way that keep everybody's needs in mind is
Mhm.
really important, right? And
Oh,
every
yeah.
family is going to look different and every family is going to, you know, have a reason to look that way. I
Mm.
remember when I was younger, and me and my friends all started having kids, we were like doing something, and the mom was like, well, we can't meet that late because we have to be at home in bed at 8. And I remember in the back of my head, sort of like being judgmental of that. I'm like, come on, it's not that big of a deal. Just like stay out late one
Mm,
night. Right. I didn't say that out loud, but I thought that in my head. And then I remember like later on in my life thinking back
mhm,
to that thought that I had. I'm like, that was so unfair of me to
mm,
have a judgment on the boundary that they had, the need that they had for their family. If they need to get their
mm.
kid in bed by 8, that is their
Yeah.
decision, and I should 100% respect that, because I don't
Mm.
know their family situation. They might, if they don't get that kid to bed at 8, they might have a horrible morning, or maybe they do something
Oh, yeah.
together at night. There's a million things, and if they want that boundary, they should be able
Mhm.
to have that without any judgment from anyone, because you don't know your family situation. And I think too much of the time we get out of balance, we get stressed because we don't make the right decisions for us that are intentional
Yeah.
about how we want to
Yeah.
spend our time and our days.
Yeah. Or we're worried about what other people will think of our boundaries or choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. Well, I think this is a really great spot to end this episode. There's so many fabulous nuggets in here from all different little topics. But if you want to plug something in here, if someone wants to, work with you in some way because they were like, oh, I need a marketer and I'm really loving her story and I resonate with her, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah. So the first thing that I'll say is, if you want to hear more about topics like women in the workplace, female entrepreneurs, all of those sorts of issues, then definitely check out my podcast. It's called Her First, and I have a co-host. We interview
Mm,
people, we talk about all kinds of things related to being an ambitious woman and how to balance your life
mm,
and all of that. I'd love to have you as a listener. If you are looking for help, I focus on course creation marketing in my
mm.
day-to-day job. So helping people create courses, package their knowledge, and be able to monetize that. You can just reach out to me via email at joanna@millennialmarketer.com is the best way to do that. And I'd be happy to chat about your course ideas.
Awesome. And thank you so much again, Joanna, for giving us your time today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And have a great week.
Thank
Bye
you
bye.
too.